Where do I begin? I don't know who's gonna end up. I don't know what's gonna happen. It was great. And also, I inhaled these books. I'm still getting the hang of it, and summer plans just kind of got a little busier than I expected them to. We had our nephew here, we were hosting him, and then we were getting ready for a really big trip to Japan for 2 weeks, which was absolutely incredible. It was me and my partner, it was our first time going, and I am like already planning the next one because we absolutely have to go back. It was amazing. Also, a big life update, got engaged while in Japan, which was amazing. But we are here because first and foremost, books. So if you are new, hello and welcome. My name is Mabel, and I started this YouTube channel earlier this year to share all things cozy, bookish. We have a lot to catch up on. Of course, we got to start off with the basics, which is catching you up on what I read during June and July. Even though the traveling happened in July and I did suffer from a bit of a slump after, I had thought that July would be the harder month for me to fit in reading, and actually looking back, I only read 3 books in June and 7 books in July, so go figure. Either way, we read 10 awesome books. Nothing was below 3 stars. It was all 3 stars and above, so I would say that it's been a really good 2 months. I've got my water, I've got my books, I've got all my notes in my little All Things YouTube journal, and I am excited. Let's get into it. So the first book that I read in June was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This was her new release in 2025. And previous to this, I had only read Funny Story by Emily Henry. That was the only other book by this author that I had read before. We are following 3 main characters whose stories intersect in a small town on, I believe it's like a small island off of the coast of Virginia or Georgia, one of those. Emily Henry loves her little small American towns, and I enjoy it too. I think it's a fun setting, and it definitely adds to the cozy experience that a lot of her books kind of provide for you. But our 3 main characters are Alice Scott, Hayden Anderson, and Margaret Ives. Margaret Ives is kind of this elderly, mysterious heiress who in her heyday was kind of like a tabloid queen and was wrapped up in this very dramatic, romantic, famous love affair with a famous singer. And no one's really heard from her for decades now. She's been isolating and kind of hiding out in this small town. So the big mystery is kind of like, what happened to Margaret Ives? Where is she? No one really knows kind of where she is. Alice, our central main character, is a bit of a struggling writer, currently working at a publication I would say is similar to like BuzzFeed. Alice gets a tip from a mysterious online board as to where Margaret truly resides, and she decides to go after this tip and eventually finds her because she wants to write a tell-all memoir that really pays tribute and does justice to Margaret's story after she's faced such a negative experience in the media from all of the coverage that the tabloids gave her. So when Alice shows up ready to get started on the memoir, she learns that she is in fact in the running and competing for this job against none other than Hayden Anderson, who has recently won a Pulitzer Prize for writing an incredible memoir about a completely different famous artist. The story unfolds as Alice and Hayden kind of separately meet with Margaret throughout the week for I think about a month or something like that, as they both trial to see which one is a better fit in Margaret's eyes. But they soon find that Margaret isn't necessarily as excited or willing to just open up as much as they want her to. And so peeling back the layers to her true story and getting the truth out of her proves to be a much harder task than either of them had hoped for. I gave Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry 3 stars. This book was interesting because I remember when I started reading it, I really enjoyed the writing style. I was still kind of new to Emily Henry's writing style, so I was having a good time with that. I enjoyed the main character, though she's not somebody that I necessarily related a lot to. Her personality is very different from one that I would identify with. I still enjoyed her perspective a lot, and I was intrigued by the chemistry between her character and the opposing, male character, and then the other storyline, kind of the parallel line, which really kind of creates the main through line for the plot, is Margaret's story, and I found that intriguing. That said, you can't read Great Big Beautiful Life if you've read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and not immediately relate the two. And so because of that, there's already kind of like this damper, right? Because you're comparing to this other book that doesn't really focus on anything else other than Evelyn Hugo's story. Whereas Great Big Beautiful Life is kind of split into two main arcs, and that is Margaret's story and then Alice and Hayden's relationship kind of developing. And because of that split, I felt like Margaret's story kind of would get a little bit boring at times in comparison because of the real estate in the book that Margaret's story took up. I felt like we weren't able to get that deeper character development that I really enjoyed, for example, in Funny Story by Emily Henry. So that relationship development felt like a little bit shallow to me. Nothing about either character really like sticks out to me as like super shiny. Nothing about any three of them, really. Do I regret reading it? Absolutely not. I enjoyed it. It was a good time. I always love the settings that Emily Henry puts us in. The ending was predictable, but I still had a good time reading the story overall. But yeah, it was nothing like amazing, so 3 stars. The second book that I read in June was The Third Gilmore Girl by the one and only Kelly Bishop, who we all know and love to hate as the famous Emily Gilmore on Gilmore Girls. Listen, you know memoir hates to see me coming. This was one that I've been wanting to read for a while, basically since it came out, mainly because I was a huge Gilmore Girls fan back in the day when the show originally started. The Third Gilmore Girl focuses on Kelly Bishop's career originating in ballet, dance, and eventually show business. Prior to being known for her role in Gilmore Girls, Kelly Bishop was one of the founding original members to A Chorus Line. I am not super familiar with A Chorus Line. I had heard of it, of course. I knew what it was, and I knew that she was a part of it and had a really important role, but it was never something that I was intimately familiar with. I wasn't a theater kid. My sister was, so I kind of would get like secondhand exposure to a lot of theater stuff from her. However, I was very curious to learn more about her experience and her career, so I was happy to pick up this book. I think sometimes folks have a hard time rating memoirs, and I will say that I don't rate memoirs the same way that I rate fiction novels. It's a little bit different. I would say that my completely arbitrary and meaningless to anybody but me method of rating memoirs is based on less tangible things and more on, I would say the most tangible thing about the way that I rate them is perhaps writing style and cohesion or cohesiveness. A memoir that would lean higher on the star rating scale would be one that draws me in, really makes me feel like I'm like somebody has like just kind of let me into some deeply like intimate part of themselves, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're telling me like the deepest, darkest secret or like the worst thing that they've ever done, but more so the manner in which that they share pieces of themselves in the story. Like it really comes through. I think a good example of that is Tom Felton's memoir. He shares a lot of personal hardships, and he's very vulnerable in his memoir, but I think I only rated it 3 stars or so because for me, there was nothing really special about the way that it was written. And when I finished reading it, I didn't necessarily feel like he had a clear purpose in writing it. Basically, if I read a memoir and I think, oh, they just wrote this because a book deal presented itself to them, then it's not going to get any higher than usually like 3 stars. You know, a good example of like a 5-star memoir would be Chanel Miller's Know My Name. I mean, her voice, the writing, the vulnerability, and just the intimate sides of herself that she communicates in that story, and the very clear purpose for why she wrote it. All of it kind of comes together into something that's just truly profound and stays with you for years. So all that said, I gave the third Gilmore Girl 3 stars. I learned more about Kelly Bishop. I learned more about how truly involved she was in a chorus line and how much her personal story informed the actual script. And that was really amazing. Overall, like, nothing really stuck out to me, and it kind of just felt like I was sitting at the kitchen table and somebody was just kind of recounting old stories. Like, it felt more like a recount of an old story or several older stories in this situation, as opposed to someone kind of like really letting me in to their past or into their heart or their mind. The very last book that I read in June, and the third book that I'll be sharing today, is Legendborn by the incredible Tracy Deonn. The latest installment in the series did come out earlier this year, and when I saw all the hype about it, unfortunately, this is the first time that I heard about the series is with the release of the third book, Oathbound. So I decided to go ahead and give it a go. It is a YA fantasy series, and I have previously stated that YA generally not a big hit with me. This is a delightful breath of fresh air, and I will say that this is the first YA fantasy book that I have read in a very long time that feels like it really hits the nail on the head by checking all the boxes. So, Legendborn. We are following a 16-year-old Bree Matthews who has recently lost her mother. The book opens up with her starting at a new residential program for high school age students at UNC Chapel Hill, and she's starting there with her best friend from home. It's been a year since Bree lost her mother, but she is still very much struggling with facing the true depths of her grief. Her very first night at UNC Chapel Hill, Bree witnesses some really crazy things involving demons and these kind of mysterious shadow hunters, I guess you could say, all around the same age. And this is her first time witnessing something supernatural, something magical, and she's like, what am I seeing? What is happening? One of these demon hunters spots her and mesmers her, which is a term used for kind of like a hypnosis sort of thing where you can remove or alter somebody's memories. And so he erases this memory that she has just witnessed. Something happens and the mesmer does not take. She remembers what she has seen, and in doing so, she also recalls that she feels the same as she did when she learned of her mother's passing, and uncovers this like hidden or mesmered memory from when she went to the hospital to learn that her mother was in an accident. And now she has questions. So she follows these people and finds out that they are a part of a secret society of the Legendborn, which is what they call themselves since they are the descendants of King Arthur and his knights. She decides to infiltrate this secret society and enlists the help of a member who previously self-exiled and has come to her aid during one of these demon attacks. Bree is desperate to learn more about this mysterious unlocked memory, whether there is some hidden truth behind her mother's passing, and learn more about her own role in all of this. As she infiltrates this society, she uncovers a lot more than she bargained for, and we go along for the ride. Where do I begin? This was a 5-star read for me. This book was so well crafted. Tracy does an amazing job at writing a really wonderful female main character who is relatable. She is fallible. She is going through these like big life learning experiences, and the writing style is also what I would say is extremely appropriate for YA readers. The magic system and the world is very intriguing. It's very different. I think this is the first like King Arthur retelling or King Arthur inspired world that I have read in a fiction novel. And so I found it very interesting because it was kind of a new or fresh magic system. The most incredible part about this though is that technically I guess you could call this magical realism because we are in our real world and this magic just kind of exists among us, and some of us know about it and some of us don't. But because Bree Matthews is a young black girl attending UNC Chapel Hill, which is a college in the Deep South, there are lots of instances where systemic racism, the historic remnants and kind of, you know, residual damage from slavery pops up and is present kind of all over. And as you are going through the story, you're seeing just how interwoven it is within Bree's own story. It's not part of the backdrop. It's very much like in your face and in a way that has you looking at it from Bree's perspective. And it's very well done. It's incredibly intriguing, interesting, mysterious. Like, you are along for a ride and you want to know what's going to happen next, and you're invested in Bree's story and in her own growth, and sometimes she is frustrating and you're rooting for her the whole time. There's a lot of supporting characters, and I would say that a lot of them are, or most of them, or if not all of them, are also very well fleshed out, and you get attached to them as well. So I don't know what else I can say. I think I might have to like do a separate video just on the series because it was incredible. And if you are a fan of YA fantasy, this is a definite recommend, and especially something that I would recommend to a young adult for sure. In case my enthusiasm about this book is not clear in the review that I just gave it, it will become clearer in the next 2 books that I share, because the next 2 books that I read were the next 2 books in the series. Books 4 and 5 in the month of July were Bloodmarked and Oathbound. I pretty much like devoured the series. This also happened to coincide with our flight to Japan, so I had like 13 hours to kill on the way there, and that's when I was reading these books, and it was delightful. I can't give a whole lot in a summary about either book without giving too much away in the series, and I don't want to give anything away because it's so much better to read this just like knowing nothing. But you know, in Bloodmarked, you are continuing along with Bree's story, and you're still very close to the timeline in Legendborn. I think Legendborn takes place over a couple of months. Like it happens in a very short period of time. And then Bloodmarked, I think maybe like a few more months, like immediately after the end of Legendborn. So you're still in the same year in both the first 2 books. And then in Oathbound, a little more time passes, but not a whole lot. Like, I think by the end of Oathbound, you're maybe a year and a half away from the beginning of Legendborn, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. The world grows, and you get a lot of backstory. You find out so much about like Bree's ancestry and her ancestral line and the history and the trauma there. You get a lot of answers, and you get like 1,000 more questions. There is some tension. Something that is like really fascinating to me is there is a bit of like a love triangle situation here throughout the story. And usually when I read a story that employs that arc, I found that I can kind of predict like who's gonna end up together. This, Tracy, I don't know who's gonna end up. I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, I have not felt like there was one period of time where I felt pretty confident, but this is not like an Edward Jacob Bella situation where like you kind of always knew it was gonna be Edward. Like, and by kind of I mean you 100% knew it was gonna be Edward. Like, no, like at least me, I don't know. Like, I know who I'm rooting for, but I have zero confidence that that's who's gonna be in the end. So, Tracy girl, you were good. I gave Bloodmarked 4 stars, and Oathbound, I think I gave 3.5 or 4 stars. I'm not confident in that rating because, like I said, I inhaled these books. I would need to read these 2 books at least again before I gave like a confident star rating. But that like tragedy of like the sequel, where the sequel is always like womp womp after the first book in a series, does not apply to Bloodmarked, in my opinion. So go read the series, but like be prepared, because they're like pretty thick. You will be sacrificing like hours of days, more probably time of your life, because you will not be able to stop reading these. So Tracy, I love you. Also a little bit, I hate you, because the ending to Oathbound just, it was great. And also, she is somebody who, from what I can tell, actually takes her time and does not like rush the next book. So like, we're gonna be waiting probably a couple of years for that last installment. Thank God it's only supposed to be 4. If she does another one, I might cry, because like the cliffhanger, cruel. Okay, so after Tracy ripped out my heart and like mangled it and destroyed it and then put it back, I needed something to kind of cleanse the palate a little bit. And I was surprised with myself at how much I did enjoy Emily Henry's books. So I decided, let's just pick up a couple more. The next 2 books that I read were Beach Read and Happy Place by Emily Henry. So with Beach Read, we have I would say perceived enemies or rivals situation. You're following January Andrews and Augustus Everett in like a kind of a forced proximity situation. Also, their names like made me giggle a little bit, because sometimes the names that M. Hen be picking are a little silly. And it does take something away from the story for me. I will not lie about that. But anyway, our girl January is a romance writer, and her father has just passed. And not only did her father, who she was very close to and admired and looked up to, not only did he just pass, but also at his funeral, none other than his mistress comes up and hands her a letter and a key. And January is like, what? because as far as she knew, her parents were madly in love until the day he died. So this is like kind of earth-shattering for her, because she is a romance writer, she's this big romantic, and the fuel, the inspo behind her romance stories has always come from that deep romance between her parents, that love that she's always admired. Now she's facing a deadline. She also like lost her apartment. She's broke. Our girl is down bad, okay? So she has no other choice but to take the key that her father's like secret affair partner has given her and go to the beach house, or excuse me, the lake house that he kept with said woman. And when she arrives there, she finds that her neighbor is none other than Augustus Everett, who she went to college with many moons ago, and never really like got along. I believe that there was some friction there, but then there was this like one passionate night at like a house party dance floor that sticks with her. But for the most part, she resented him for the way that he would like critique her writing and kind of just like in general being a bit of a grouch and like annoying to her. Of course, they kind of keep bumping into each other. One thing leads to another, and they end up kind of in this like bet with one another that helps her feel a little bit more motivated to write, because she's facing some writer's block, and essentially kind of uses this bet with Gus to help her make her deadline. And so they kind of help each other write, because he, of course, is also a writer. They end up spending more time together. You can kind of guess the rest. January is also going through this journey with like her grief, coming to terms with like her anger towards her father, but also like the man that she knew all of her life. I gave Beach Read 3 stars. I enjoyed it, I think, more probably than Great Big Beautiful Life. But once I read Book Lovers, because that is another book that I read in July, it did kind of affect the rating for this book, which is weird, and I don't even know if that's fair, but like the plot lines to both books are like same girl, different outfit. Like it's very similar, and I even sometimes get them mixed up when I'm recalling details about both books. However, I did have a good time. I felt like January's anger and her grief was definitely like palpable and relatable. The main issue, even if you take out the similarities to Book Lovers, the main issue that I had is that the plot at times felt very weak to me, and there were some things that I felt were kind of inserted for convenience plot-wise that just kind of definitely left me dissatisfied and made me roll my eyes just a little bit. So it was fine. It was a good time. Yes, this is an Emily Henry heavy recap. I kind of just like went in, I don't know why, but I just kind of like went in hard with her books. And the next book that I picked up was Happy Place. Happy Place is very different from any of the previous books that I had read by her. There is, of course, a main through story that is a romance, but it is a second chance romance, which I think is the first time that I really read a book like that. Like I said, I'm pretty new to contemporary romance. Like I mean, before this year, I wasn't really picking up contemporary romance ever. So my first second chance romance, I really liked that. But also different from her other books because we are also dealing with friendships, because apart from our 2 main characters, we also have 4 other best friends that are all part of the same friend group. So Happy Place takes place in a cute little coastal town in Maine, I believe, at this like summer cottage that this group of 6 friends has a tradition of going to every summer and spending a week together. Harriet is on her way there. This is her happy place because her 2 best friends and their partners have been going to this place for many years, and no matter how crazy her life is, like, this is an experience that she can always look forward to and count on. However, at the start of the book, we meet Harriet as she's making her way to said cottage, and she's a little bit in a dark place, and she's not really sharing that with anybody because she and her ex-fiance, Win, have not told the rest of their friends that they are separated, and they've been separated for about 8 months. They had made up some excuse about why Win couldn't go so that they wouldn't have to be stuck together for a week. But when Harriet arrives at the house, surprise, guess who's there? Win has been like strong-armed into showing up by one of the pushier friends in the group. Throughout the story, you are following them over the course of the week as they kind of panic and decide to just pretend that they never broke up, since neither of them ever told their friends that they did break up. And of course, that creates, you know, forced proximity and the fake dating thing all in one. But you're also kind of going back in time and going through these different flashbacks to through their origin story, how they fell in love, how they came together, and how they fell apart. I really enjoyed Happy Place. I gave it 4 stars. I would say Funny Story is still my favorite above this one, but Happy Place is a close second. Like I said, I'm surprised to find out I really enjoyed the second chance romance. I think because you're getting the origin and the falling in love part of it, but you're also getting the like messiness of how a relationship can fall apart even when 2 people love each other, and how they can find their way back to each other. I think that's just really hard to do in real life, and I think even harder to do successfully on paper. I thought Emily did a really good job at telling that story. Mental illness is a part of that, like, falling apart, and that was incredible to me. That was so well done. Just like, as somebody who does struggle with mental illness, and one of the biggest pain points is the way that it affects how I show up in relationships, especially in my romantic relationship. Seeing that play out in this story was really meaningful, and I really appreciated how she incorporated that. I thought it was very well done. The last thing that kind of really sealed it for me as a favorite is the exploration of female friendships and navigating friendships, like long-term friendships, from like young adulthood into older adulthood. I mean, I think they're in their 30s, so we're not talking like super advanced into adulthood, but we're talking about like how friendships change from college into, you know, these, when you start hitting these bigger milestones like marriage. You know, the characters were definitely frustrating and annoying at times. Everybody was fallible, but I grew to love all of them by the end of the story, and I thought it was very relatable. Like, I think all of them live in different places, and I have one of my best friends lives across the country. I personally know what it's like to have that, like, you're so looking forward to catching up and spending quality time with a friend that you don't get to see regularly, and you know, it's like you just saw each other yesterday when you see each other. But then also there's like things that happen and change, and then in navigating that. The last thing I'll say about this is the part about them like keeping the secret from their friends about the fact that they broke up. That did not feel like just a convenient like device to create this scenario. That felt very real to me, because I personally struggle to be vulnerable oftentimes more. I struggle more being vulnerable with the people closest to me because I don't want to disappoint them, or I don't want to let them down. And I definitely felt like that's what these characters were both struggling with. So as like a 34-year-old millennial woman, I think Emily Henry's around my age. Like it felt very relatable to me, and I really appreciated the way that she kind of incorporated these different themes into a cozy romance story. Okay, so I did take a brief little break from Emily Henry, and the next book that I picked up was Under Loch and Key by Lana Ferguson. Who is she? Like, let's not forget Mabel of a few months ago, who was like, yeah, I don't really care about contemporary romance, and now it's like more than half the books that I read in this summer have been romances. I don't know what's wrong with me. Under Loch and Key by Lana Ferguson follows Kiana McKay, who is an American woman who is arriving in Scotland with her father's ashes to kind of lay him to rest in his hometown. We've got a lot of deceased fathers in our books from June and July, which is interesting. Or deceased parents, I should say. Kiana arrives in Scotland, and she is not just there to lay her father to rest, but also she is there to find her estranged grandmother, who had a falling out with her father when he made the decision to leave Scotland prior to Kiana's birth, like just prior to her birth. So during his lifetime, he was very closed off about his family and his origins. He didn't talk very much about his mother or about Scotland in general, except for one story that he told her, like a bedtime story that he would tell her all the time, where when he was a child, the Loch Ness Monster saved him from, I think, falling to his death on some rocks by the lake. And that's all that she has from him about his home country. And so she goes to this lake with his ashes to spread them and lay him to rest where he asked in his final days to be put to rest. When she is about to do that, she almost slips, and in comes this large, burly Scottish man to the rescue. Enter our grumpy love interest, Lachlan Greer, who immediately is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And so that leads, of course, to a bit of a rocky start between the two. Not only is Lachlan irritated with this like crazy American tourist who doesn't watch for, doesn't read the signs that tells you like no entry or whatever, but he learns that she is a McKay, and this is very serious. This is like a big red flag for Lachlan, because his ancestors and the McKays go back centuries, and not in a good way. There's this like centuries long beef between the two families. Knowing who she is, he takes her directly to her grandmother's doorstep, and that is when Kiana learns that Lachlan is actually like the ranch hand on her grandmother's ranch. And also Lachlan witnesses that her grandmother is not happy to see her. So the story kind of follows Kiana as she tries to warm up to her grandmother's cold shoulder, while Kiana is on her journey to uncover some truths about her father's past. Lachlan is on a different journey that kind of does involve a little bit of McKay history as well. So they find out that they can help each other. I was not entirely sure if this was going to be like a fantasy or magical realism book. And spoiler, it is. It does involve a Loch Ness Monster. And that was kind of a delight. I was looking for something whimsical and a bit silly, and Lana Ferguson definitely delivered. I won't share more because I don't want to spoil any of that, but it was a really fun time, and I really enjoyed the way that she incorporated the mythical history of the Loch Ness Monster within the story in a way that was both like funny and a little bit, not taking itself too seriously, but still taking you along on this like romance ride as well. It was definitely a predictable ending, but that by no means impacted the fun time that I had while reading this book. I did give Under Loch and Key 3 stars. Okay, we're getting close, you guys. The second to last book that I read in July, and the last Emily Henry that I'll be covering in this video, is Book Lovers. So Book Lovers follows Nora Stevens, who is this like cutthroat shark literary agent from New York City. She like rides her Peloton every day and like takes no bullshit from everyone, rides or dies for her clients. Like, she is known in the community as like the woman you do not want to mess with. But her greatest weakness is her little sister, Libby, who she can never say no to and is always concerned with and is always looking out for. So when Libby, at I think like 6 or 7 months pregnant or something, tells her or begs her to take a month-long sabbatical with her in the charming town of Sunshine Falls, Nora can't say no. Off they go to Sunshine Falls in North Carolina, I believe, to spend a month at this charming little Airbnb in what is supposed to be this like idyllic, cute, adorable little town. When she arrives in Sunshine Falls, she bumps into none other than Charlie Lastra, who is this well-known, broody editor. It isn't exactly a welcome surprise when she bumps into him at a coffee shop. We come to learn that Charlie is in town because it's actually his hometown and he is there to help his family after his father had a pretty serious accident, and they now need help at home due to his father's limited mobility, as well as additional help at the bookstore that his parents own and run. As Nora and Charlie continue to bump into each other, they begin to learn more about one another. And as the reader, we also begin to learn a little bit more about why Nora is so obsessed with making sure that her sister is happy and has what she needs, while simultaneously learning more about why Charlie went to New York and really never looked back to Sunshine Falls. I gave Book Lovers 3 stars. I think if I had to compare it going back to Beach Read, the plot lines are extremely similar, but I think I did enjoy Book Lovers more. The character exploration was a little bit better, and I really appreciated the exploration of the sisterly relationship. As an eldest daughter, I related a lot to Nora's struggles when she was kind of being a harsh critic of herself when it came to the way that she showed up as a sister. It was a little bit cheesy at times. There were some aspects to the plot that felt like a little convenient, less organic, but I would still recommend this book, and I definitely still had a good time. Okay, we made it, and we are at the very last book that I picked up in July, and that includes another 2025 release, The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I'll be honest, the cover art got me. I mean, look at this. This is stunning. I saw the cover art and I was like, yeah, I need to read this book because it's pretty. Like, that doesn't always happen, okay? I promise I'm not that shallow. But in this instance, I was, okay? I was. I think it was all the, like, rom-coms that I was reading that just kind of, like, weakened me a little bit. So I was very excited to pick up Rachel Gillig's new release, The Night and the Moth. So in The Night and the Moth, we are following Sybil Delling, who has spent the last decade drowning and dreaming prophecies as one of 6 diviners. In fact, we know her as 6, not as Sybil, because the 6 girls don't share their names with each other, with anyone. The only person that knows Sybil's name is Sybil herself. These are the 6 diviners in the kingdom of Trom, and they reside in this like big, beautiful Gothic cathedral where their job is to drown, essentially, when someone comes and pays to have kind of their future read. So it's a pretty dark and twisted, like, seer or oracle setup. All 6 girls wear the same identical gossamer shrouds to cover their eyes. And it definitely plays into the symbolism behind their ability to see these prophecies when they are drowning during these ceremonies. The 6 diviners live under the care of the abbess at this cathedral and several magical gargoyles that are kind of like fairies. They're enchanted and they talk and engage with them. And Sybil has kind of like a close friend type of gargoyle who is he's a bat-like gargoyle that calls everyone Bartholomew. Like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, nobody, no discrimination. He calls everyone Bartholomew, and it's really cute. If you are also like a 90s kid and ever watched that show Gargoyles, that's what I was constantly picturing in my head every time. And I just found that to be really cute and fun. We are nearing the end of the terms of their service because diviners only serve for 10 years, when all of a sudden, one by one, the girls begin to disappear. With the help of a charming knight named Roderick, or more fondly called Rory, Sybil is able to escape and enlist his help along with her charming gargoyle friend and ultimately the king and another one of his knights. She's able to enlist them to help her find what has happened to her sisters, because that is how she now sees these women. They're her sisters, and she's the only woman left standing, so she needs to find them. As she joins them, because she has never really spent time outside of this cathedral since they were not allowed to leave, and she has no memory of her life prior, she's finding out a lot of things that she thought were different. And there are some hard truths that Sybil must swallow. I gave The Knight and the Moth 3.5 stars. This was a really good time. I didn't know what to expect going into it. I really didn't have any information. I thought the magic system in the world was unique. It was different. My favorite thing about this story was the mood. Rachel Gillig, and I had heard this, she's very good at creating this very, very vivid setting. Like, it's gothic, it's moody, it's dark, and it really kind of brings you in. So I definitely felt like I was in that world. I felt the mist. I could see the architecture. I could see the forest. Like, I felt like I was there. And I really love a book that makes me feel like I'm in this setting, especially when it's like a mythical setting. I think that's really powerful, and I just love that. I mentioned that I absolutely loved our gargoyle friend. He was a delight. He made me giggle and laugh, and definitely added a little bit of comedic release to the heaviness of the plot in a way that didn't feel like trite or silly. It was very charming, and it definitely made the story fun, and I think added to the pace too, because there were some moments where perhaps the story was moving a bit slowly, but like in retrospect, but I didn't feel that way while I was reading it, because that one element really did make a big difference in a positive way. Speaking of pacing, we do have a bit of a slow burn romance, a little bit of yearning. We're not exactly enemies to lovers, but like, we don't really like each other at the beginning. So we see kind of that transformation over time, and that's fun. I did enjoy that as well. I think probably my favorite thing character-wise about this story is that Sybil is a strong female character, and she is described as strong in a way that, like, I find sometimes, like, when we read these fantasy stories, that it's like she was strong and feisty, but like also this like delicate, dainty little creature, and I did not get that when I was reading Sybil. Like, even though she's in this like ridiculous gossamer gown and like the shroud and everything, her body is described as strong. Like, her muscles are big. I mean, she has to repeatedly be drowned for 10 years. Like, a dainty person doesn't come out of that. You know, a strong person does, and it shows in her body, it shows in her character. She's not like annoyingly feisty, she's like tough. And I thought that was really refreshing from the FMCs that we're kind of used to getting in these types of stories. So I really appreciated that Rachel gave us that type of heroine to follow throughout the story. And that wraps up our recap for the months of June and July. It is now dark outside, so I apologize if the lighting throughout this video changed. But hopefully my studio light did enough work for us to be able to salvage this video because I yapped for a long time. Thank you so much for watching. I am so excited to get back into my YouTube routine. I'm really excited to share the videos in the next couple of weeks that I have planned for you guys, including some cozy vlogs. So if you stayed to the end, please leave a sword emoji in the comments. And if you read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts. If you are looking forward to reading any of them based on any of the reviews that I gave, please let me know as well. And if you think that you have a book recommendation that I might enjoy, obviously tell me. If you are new and you are not subscribed, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another video, and be sure to hit the like button in my early days here on YouTube. That makes a huge difference and also lets me know that you enjoy this type of content so that I can continue making more for you to enjoy. And until the next one, I will see you next time. Bye!